Dave Clawson resigning from Wake Forest as their head football coach. It is no longer just reports, although, credit to Pete Thamel of ESPN, he was the first I saw with it. The school has confirmed. Dave Clawson has announced his resignation as Wake Forest head football coach. And I read the article on GoDeeks.com, which is their team site. A lot of the same stuff we've been talking about, right? Since he took over in 2014, it's been one of, if not pretty obviously the most successful stretch of football for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, with a whole bunch of reasons for that, right? From, most 10-win seasons, bowl appearances, 7 straight years, first top 10 ranking at any point in time in program history, and they did it in back-to-back years. All ACC selections. There's just a lot of good from the time with Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, which, again, will lead immediately to 2 more questions, right? You hear this, your first reaction is, wow, he was a good coach. A lot of respect for him, always handled things. He was always a fun guy at like ACC kickoff, right? He would always sit there and felt like he was being honest and kind of everyman talking with you. First question is why. Second question is, okay, who's next? And that's the way sports is, right? Next man up. There's no time to dilly-dally and wallow in your pity. You got to have the next guy lined up because the portal's already open. Recruiting's already taken place. There are assistant coaches that need to be hired if you don't bring on much of the same staff. There's a lot to get to there.
And also, who's available in terms of coaching? Pretty much everything's been filled up from my understanding, if I remember correctly. Everything's filled up, and everyone else is already trying to fill their staffs.
Yep.
And so now you got to try and build depending on who the new person brings in, or if it's someone you're hiring within, who are you retaining? You still have to hire people. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of question marks, and the timing of this is rough, to say the least. The
why, I think, is simple. He's an older older is the wrong way. He's 57, but he's an experienced coach. Has been a head coach for 24 years. And there's a good chance that he's just looking around and saying, maybe I'm not being as effective in this new college football, and I want to impact the game in other ways, or I need to take a refresher. Somebody else will be the guy. The timing of it is brutal, as you mentioned. And Wake Forest whoever they hire is going to have to give them a little bit of leeway to maybe have a year where things aren't as exciting and aren't as upwards and everybody's happy as you'd think. There's already some articles being posted about who could be next. One of the names I'm seeing is Bob Chesney from JMU.
Okay.
Here's the hard part. If you're somebody with a little cachet that you think, I have had options and I've turned them down, I don't know if not saying Wake Forest isn't a great situation, because you do have to go prove you can win at a power conference level, but I'm just saying, do you really want to be dropped in someplace mid-December rather than 3 weeks ago like some of these other guys, or do you just kind of wait around and bank on yourself to have another successful season and have more options next year? Dennis, you brought up an interesting name in Brad Idzik, the offensive coordinator for the Panthers.
Yeah.
Which is not completely random. He is A, born in Durham, and then B, played for 2011 to 2014 at Wake Forest as quite frankly, like a
reserve wideout.
A reserve wideout who was probably there thinking, I love football so much, I want to be a coach. It's easier if you play. And he's 33 years old. He's an offensive mind. He's worked under Dave Canales, who obviously brings a certain energy that I think actually plays better at the college level than the pro level.
And he was a graduate assistant at Stanford for several years, I think under David Shaw from 2014 to 2018.
Great call.
So he has some collegiate experience, and again, ties, and he's literally right down the road from from Winston-Salem down to Charlotte. It's not that far of a drive. Younger guy, I don't know. That's a possibility. It just popped into my head. It's like, well, he's available.
Make the call. NFL going to college, you've seen it happen recently.
Right?
Somewhere else in North Carolina. You could also throw in, I'm seeing Neil Brown, who was recently the West Virginia coach, although that didn't end perfectly. There's still some people that are high on him in the coaching world. Maybe Wake Forest takes a chance. And depending on the buyout, maybe, and buyout language, maybe you don't have to pay him as much, which would always be lovely.
I know Neil Brown was linked heavily to App State, and that obviously didn't come to fruition because I know the App State hired the offensive coordinator from South Carolina to be their head coach. I don't know. He might still be floating around out there. That way you don't have to worry about trying to poach somebody from someone else and someone another school.
Even though It's happening quickly, and it may seem ridiculous that we learned of this now 12 minutes ago and we're already shuffling out multiple names as a possible replacement. That's kind of how quickly you have to move in college football right now. Unless they have an ace in the hole and they're going to sign Bill Belichick, which did take longer than I would have guessed, but I think you wait for a name like that. If you are bringing in a more traditional hiring coach, such as, a group of 5 head coach who's looking to bounce up, or a coordinator from somewhere who's looking to get their first head coaching job, I think you need to make that happen quickly, because the longer you are rudderless without a head coach, the more the portal's going to pass you by, the more recruiting decisions are going to pass you by, and the more difficult it is going to be to fundraise, which is a wildly important part of college football right now. With Dave Clawson staying on, because that's the other part of this, he's staying on in an advisory role, he'll be around the program, I wouldn't be surprised if they already have an airtight plan for what's to happen next.
That's
they
a good point.
Probably have been discussing it because they knew that, all right, the timing isn't perfect. By the time we roll out the news of you, we're going to need to have things in motion behind the scenes, maybe even before that news breaks. So I would, if I were a Wake Forest fan, I'd be refreshing, maybe not today, right? Celebrate Dave Clawson for today, but be refreshing all the Twitter feeds and everything starting tomorrow for interviews, if not negotiations taking place with different players or different coaches, excuse me.
By the way, you did mention transfer portal because Clawson's announced today that they're stepping down. It's a 30-day window now for current Wake Forest players in the transfer portal. So as opposed to their clock starting on December 9th, if they decide to enter today, it's 30 days from today.
Which is a whole thing, because it'll be longer for the Wake Forest players to decide if they want to leave, but the players that Wake Forest is going to recruit out of the portal, their windows, it's not like, hey, our coach left, can we have everyone open to a portal for us for 30 days after our new hire? So hiring quickly and evaluating the portal quickly become very important for Wake Forest. And you better know this. If you bring in a tight end out of the portal, your tight end can wait until the portal closes for everybody else before they decide to leave because, hey, you recruited somebody over me. So it is going to be a very, very communication-filled next few weeks for Wake Forest, because you have to know where everybody stands. The timing of this is not ideal for the Demon Deacons.
I feel like they have a plan.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have something behind the scenes that they've been talking about, because Dave Clawson is sticking around, so he's a part of it. He doesn't want to mess over the team and then stick around to be a part of the group that's going to suffer a tough season.